So one of the points I was unhappy with about Ramachandran's TED Talks was that he pointed out that your close relatives, or you sweat when you see your close relatives or people or things that mean a lot to you. It seemed counterintuitive to me. Why should you sweat when you see people that mean a lot to you, your loved ones and so on? I'd argue that actually that galvanic skin response is caused by the structure, the brain structure, the fusiform gyrus, in fact, having evolved over a period where, particularly pre-70,000 years ago, Africa was a desert and hominids were struggling to survive. There'd be competition for water resources, and particularly megafauna of the time, lions, hyenas and such like, would have preyed upon hominids, especially when they drank at water holes. And it was a very stressful time for the species, if you like, the hominid species, in fact, driving much of it out of Africa. It's typical of predator-prey equilibria, that for hominids to survive, they would have to have places of sanctuary to keep the equilibrium going. One of the things that hominids would have done was migrated away from the deserts, basically, where they'd suffer high mortality at the hands of megafauna of the time. So for much of the evolution of hominids, although hominids did hunt, as one would think aborigines do, smaller animals, they were also hunted as well. There is some fossil evidence, especially of earlier hominids, that they were preyed upon, especially by the cat family. Even some evidence of eagles having taken hominids. And one has to think that during this time, for millions of years in fact, hominids would be under pressure from larger animals, and the brain would have had to deal with this. What I'm suggesting is that the fusiform gyrus, the face recognition area and the word recognition area, both evolved over the millions of years when we came out of the trees, basically. And possibly we were forced out of trees by the receding forests, probably in response to environment. So everything wasn't a Garden of Eden, as you were, or as it were. Under those circumstances, I think the fusiform evolved in the same way that prairie dogs have evolved a visual recognition system of their predators and a parallel vocal recognition pattern. I think that the fusiform on the one side evolved to deal with the recognition of our predators, and a parallel structure in the left brain that produced corresponding sounds. So there was an implicitly learned language, rather like prairie dogs. In fact, prairie dogs would have an advantage over us because they have a fixed background against which to recognize their predators, whereas hominids would have been more complex environment, constantly changing, and so to recognize, identify, and work out a strategic response to predators would have been a complex business. But nevertheless, I think the fusiform probably evolved, or the structure of the fusiform probably evolved over those years to deal with predators. However, what I'm suggesting is that when hominids pre 60,000 years discovered a mirror, they became aware of themselves in distinction to an awareness of their belonging to a troop, so that they understood their own interactions, their own value as an individual, and the mirror therefore was a substitute to some extent for the qualities of other members of the troop, who would define the individual's abilities and the individual's identity. And from that moment on, the most important things to the individual were himself and his loved ones, and the objects that, especially maybe the mirror, that meant a lot to him. And these would come to overlay on the structure of the fusiform. So in fact, when we sweat in response to seeing our loved ones or objects that mean a lot to us, what's actually happening is the fusiform is actually becoming activated. And it was a structure which had evolved to deal with our predators. So seeing the most important thing to us activated our galvanic skin responses.